pneumonia. That same year after the pneumonia, I began realizing that unless I did something, I probably wouldn't live very much longer, and I wouldn't be able to look after my children. So through some miracle, I say it's a miracle, I was able to come to this country and get access to antiretroviral therapy. And with that gave me a new lease on life. It gave me hope. It gave me the will to continue and to look after my children and to give back. And these drugs made a difference in my life. They allowed me to go back to school, where I was able to get my undergrad degree and to do a master's in public health in maternal child health. And my path throughout to the World Health Organization, where I'm working today, which is quite an achievement for a person who, once I was diagnosed, I was told, you're not going to live beyond 2 years.
We can talk about Africa and 700 people, Kenyans, dying every day, 700 people dying. And we could talk about Nigeria, where 800 people are dying every day in Nigeria. We could talk about Zimbabwe, where 2,000 people are dying every week in Zimbabwe. But right here in the United States, 1 in every 50 African American men are infected. Right here in the United States, 1 teenager becomes infected every hour. Right here in these United States, and out of those 1 per hour teenager, 70% of them are African Americans. The faith community in the African diaspora has the ability to connect. It is the faith community that connects us, not just connects in Kenya or Nigeria or Zimbabwe or Kenya or Cote d'Ivoire, all these countries where the Balm and Gilead work, but it connects across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean.
All of us who are well-meaning and who really think that ARVs make a difference and that they're important for people in the developing world to have access, I think we're all lobbying and pressurizing because it's the only way. We need these drugs to be literally almost free for those who are just so poor to be able to have access to them. And how do we do that? And so far right now, we know that the generics are the ones which are pretty cheap. In some countries I hear, like in Rwanda, $25 a month. Still, for some, that's still a little bit expensive. But with the big pharmas, even though there's been, a really good negotiation that has taken place and the costs have really come down, or the prices, it's still a little bit expensive. And so we're all pushing because ultimately what we want is universal access. How do we get universal access? It literally has to be free. Almost free for people to be able to have access. So, and I urge, everybody to be out there and lobbying and saying, look, these drugs are there. We know they prolong life. We have 42 million living with HIV and AIDS. At least 6 million are in need of this treatment. We have over 3 million dying every year. This is worse than any war we've ever seen. How can we just sit back and let this happen? And we can do something about it. What are we going to say 10, 20 years from now when a whole generation is decimated in a place like Africa or India or China or whatever, because the epidemic is not just raging in Africa. It's moved to Asia, to China, Eastern Europe. I mean, we need to wake up and realize that we need to do something.
If people really wanted to treat people in Africa for AIDS drugs, they would be identifying research targets that were designed to have products that were heat stabilized, that were lots of fixed dose combinations. If there was questions about the quality of the fixed dose combinations of the testing, which Jeff has raised in other meetings, there would be clinical trials. They'd be knocking those things out. They wouldn't be screwing around with it. They'd basically be on a war footing, and they'd be fixing these kind of problems. But we're now engaged in this endless bickering over stupid regulatory issues because it's perceived as a barrier to keep the Indians out of the market. And it's just another way of sort of gaming on behalf of the branded industry in those areas.
We're working to stimulate generic competition so that we can see those prices drop and we can make the medicines more widely available. But in the meantime, the brand name industry, the R&D-based industry, has not voluntarily dropped the prices of their drugs to a level that's affordable. And I think this is one thing to keep in mind when you think through the kinds of policy solutions that are going to actually guarantee equitable and affordable access to medicines over the long term. It can't rely on a voluntary ad hoc system that relies on the goodwill of companies to do what's right. There has to be something pushing them, forcing them to do it.
If what we share is an interest in ensuring that people who are some of the poorest and most affected by epidemic disease can get access to the medicines they need so that they have a hope of having the kind of life that the rest of us take for granted, then it seems to me that the best way forward, and here I agree with one thing Jamie just said, is to cease bickering about things and try to find ways to work together on the ground in developing countries to get the medicines that do exist to the people who need them. That's certainly what Merck continues to try to do, along with the research that we're doing into new medicines and vaccines, and we welcome the opportunity to work with partners in the public sector, in the NGO community, as well as in the private sector to try to make that happen more and quicker and really to help the people who need the medicines that we can provide.
Because they're trying to get back to what's basically a moral issue. Are we going to ration medicine to only those who can pay? Are we going to pit innovation versus access as some kind of Sophie's choice where you have to decide whether you like to have innovation or you like to have access? Or can we design a way of paying off the innovators which is more rational in terms of capacity to pay and what you get back in terms of therapeutic innovation, plus more efficient that is morally not repugnant?
I think what we need is a dialogue between the commercial culture and the NGO not-for-profit culture, so that the for-profit and the not-for-profit are in some kind of conversation, and in a conversation somewhat as equals, even though there's a huge economic disparity. I mean, what the not-for-profit sector may lack in economics should be compensated for if the sector is being true to what the sector, I think, was founded for. It should compensate in values.
What have we learned in 20 years in battling this disease is that you have to continue to drive the message home. There's so much ignorance out there about, I've had people come up to me recently and still talk about a government conspiracy behind this disease. It's incredible, and the role models that are out there. I think Harvey Fierstein wrote a great piece in the New York Times, which I actually brought with me today. Anybody would like a copy? I think it's very smartly written and right on the money, talking about the role models that we've created, at least within the gay community in the last 20 years. And the role model has really been the HIV positive individual. Through the drug companies, it's living with AIDS. He argues quite forcefully that we've created the wrong role model. It really should be the HIV negative person should be the one, the people that have taken responsibility for themselves.
I'm very proud to see my fellow members of the music industry who have mobilized and put the life into life beat and artists that come forward. We're under attack all the time in the music industry for the sleaze factor and the other factor. I welcome you to go to our website and see the good that we do every day in the music industry and how superstars really do give back every single day.
You know how serious AIDS is?
Several panelists showed videos that illustrated the use of star power and mass media to sway public opinion toward the cause, whether that cause be AIDS prevention, peace, or truth.
We believe that any conflict that has been started by human beings can be ended, can be transformed by human beings, and that's what we attempt to do. We use what we call a multi-pronged approach, meaning that the arts initiatives that you will hear and see in a moment are only one aspect of each of our programs. We work extensively with the media. So in Africa, for example, we work with radio. In the Balkans, we work with television because that's the medium to reach most people.
Что мислиш дека би помогнало?
If I refer to that as air cover, we are also working to provide ground cover, and that's where most of our arts initiatives come in. So if we think of the mass media as reaching out into the villages and into the cities and into the rural communities throughout countries, we are also working at the grassroots level, bringing many of the same messages home to people.
If you look at the economy, you look at the law, the sort of third part of that triangle is the culture. And what our policy so often focuses on is the rule of law and how that connects to a political system. And